What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through some of the top buy low and sell high trade targets heading into week 9 of the NFL season. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Any questions, feel free to drop them down below. But let's just dive right into my first buy low player here, and it is going to be Kenneth Walker. This was really his first down game of the season, only 8.5 PPR points. Prior to this game, he had been super consistent, 14 plus in his first 5 games, 18 plus in 4 of those 5. And I wouldn't think, Kenneth Walker would be viewed as a buy low or someone that people would be willing to sell low on, because prior to this week, he had been locked in as a high end RB1 in points per game. He had been super consistent, very productive. But as someone who's making fantasy football content, I'm seeing people leave comments. I'm seeing them run trades by me. And one thing I really noticed, specifically last week, was I'd be getting questions about, should I trade X running back for Kenneth Walker? And I was pretty shocked at how willing, I guess other league managers were to get rid of Kenneth Walker. Because a lot of the trade questions I was getting was like, I'm giving up this back end RB1 and I'm getting Kenneth Walker in return. And it didn't make a ton of sense to me because he had been so productive. He had been producing at such a high level for fantasy. I was surprised to see a lot of those comments. So I wouldn't really have thought that he would be considered a buy low, if I didn't see those, but I have. So I want to talk about him here. And looking at Kenneth Walker's workload to start off this season, he's averaging 12.3 carries per game, which is not ideal. And if you told me heading into this year that, through 8 weeks of the NFL season, he'd be sitting at 12.3 carries, I would have told you he likely would have been a bust at this point, because heading into the season, he was primarily someone who's going to handle a solid workload on the ground, but he wasn't going to be super involved as a pass catcher. The vast majority of his production was going to come on the ground. And I think those 12.3 carries a game, it's not like his usage has been bad. It's mostly just a game script issue where, especially in recent weeks, the Seahawks are just falling behind early on. They're just not able to execute a super run-heavy game script because they're trying to come back. Geno Smith racking up a ton of passing volume, but Kenneth Walker has been able to counteract maybe that somewhat low rushing volume with his receiving usage. In only 6 games, Kenneth Walker is already 2 receptions away from tying his previous season high. So the receiving usage, massive uptick. He's averaging over 5 targets per game. He has 27 receptions for 193 receiving yards. Now, he is not some sort of elite pass catching back. He's not in the CMC tier up with a guy like that. But even after a down game, he's still averaging 20 PPR points per game. He's getting enough as a pass catcher to still give him a pretty high weekly ceiling and season-long ceiling at the running back position. So I just believe that Kenneth Walker is a very good player. We know he is a very good pure runner. Even if the efficiency hasn't been great recently, his advanced metrics are still solid. Rushing yards are over expected, all of that. He now has that receiving production, and I still view him as at worst a mid-tier RB1. I think he's a mid to high-end RB1 rest of season. And if your league mates are not going to value him like that, I think you should take advantage of it. Now, my other buy low player is going to be another running back here, and it's actually going to be Nick Chubb. And to be completely honest with you guys, I wasn't super high on Nick Chubb coming into the season. You had this kind of aging running back who was coming off a very serious knee injury, wasn't going to be ready week 1. And you're kind of looking at the situation offense might not be great. He might be a shell of his former self, might turn into a committee with a guy like Jerome Ford. There were a lot of concerns with drafting Nick Chubb. So I was not super in on him. But after 2 weeks of seeing him play here, I am willing to buy low on Nick Chubb. And it's not like he's come in and just, tore it up right away. Week 7, 11 carries for 22 yards, had a rushing touchdown, 3 targets, 1 reception for 10 yards. Followed that up in week 8 with 16 carries for 52 yards, no receiving production. So the numbers have not been great through 2 weeks, but here's why I'm optimistic about Nick Chubb moving forward. First off, the usage is already pretty great for his first 2 games back. Now, this is obviously not prime Nick Chubb carries, 11, 16. It's not like he's handling 20 plus opportunities per game. But this is, his first 2 games back from a very, very serious injury. It would not have been shocking to see the Browns kind of roll him out, give him sub 10 carries for a few weeks, kind of let him get his feet wet. That is not what we've seen. 10 plus opportunities in both of these games. And I think volume wise, he's already at an RB2 fantasy wise level. And so I think, now we're just hoping for the efficiency to improve. And I do think that efficiency can improve moving forward. He's at 2.7 yards per carry through 2 weeks, but the advanced metrics look very fine. He had +2 rushing yards over expected here in week 8. Just a tough defense here against the Ravens, especially their run defense. And then he had -4 rushing yards over expected in week 7. So it's not like he's going out and dominating. But once again, first 2 weeks back from a very, very serious injury, it's not shocking that he's going to need a little bit to get back to, former Nick Chubb form or just a very, very good NFL running back. So I think he should continue to get better here, continue to progress throughout the season. And then I think the, kind of addition here of Jameis Winston into the starting quarterback spot is going to be a massive difference for this offense. He has given them life. In his first start, they go out, they put up 29 points. They had not scored 20 points in any of their previous games with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So Jameis just raises the entire ceiling of this offense. That's going to lead to more touchdown upside for a guy like Nick Chubb. So in my opinion, like worst case scenario, he should be a back-end RB2 rest of season, at least in terms of how I'm valuing him. I think he's going to be a nice weekly RB2 play. Like I said, should continue to get better. Obviously, the offensive line isn't great. It's probably not going to be great moving forward. But Nick Chubb doesn't look like some, washed-up shell of himself version. I think he's a nice buy low here at the running back position. Now, pivoting into some of my sell highs, we're going to start off here with J.K. Dobbins. And he's someone who I did talk about a couple of weeks ago, so I don't really want to belabor the point and just repeat every single thing I said. But what I did say a couple of weeks ago was that J.K. Dobbins has been a very good pick. He has been a complete smash with where you drafted him, right? So if you picked him, it's not like, oh, J.K. Dobbins is bad, he's going to be terrible moving forward. But obviously, the price where you drafted him at is not how he's being valued at now. He's a very startable running back too. He's averaging 15 PPR points per game. But here are my current issues with J.K. Dobbins and why I'd be looking to move off of him. First off, just in terms of how he is producing, he is a little bit touchdown dependent. In the 3 games where he has not found the end zone, he has put up under 10 PPR points. A big reason for that is just his limited receiving production. In 7 games, he has 19 receptions for 87 receiving yards. So there's just not a ton of usage as a pass catcher, which is going to make you fairly dependent on getting into the end zone. The other main concern I have is that Dobbins really has not handled a consistent workload like he has this year throughout his career. He's averaging 16 carries per game, and you might think that's a positive, right? You want your running back to have a big workload, and that is true, but I do have 2 kind of issues with his current usage. The first one is the fact that he might already be fading in terms of, handling that large workload. Week 1, 10 carries for 135 yards. Week 2, 17 carries for 131 yards. He came out of the gate hot, 2 very, very efficient games, 2 monster performances. Since those first 2 weeks, J.K. Dobbins is averaging 3.2 yards per carry on 85 attempts. He has not hit 4 yards per carry in a game since all the way back in week 2, and he has negative rushing yards over expected in 4 of his last 5. So the first concern is with that usage, he might already be pretty much fading off this season. And then the second issue I have is he going to be able to stay healthy with that type of usage moving forward? From 2021 through 2023, J.K. Dobbins played in 9 total games. We know during that stretch, he suffered a torn ACL and a torn Achilles. I'm worried that at some point, his body is just going to break down, and maybe it doesn't break down with a serious injury, but we might already be on the breakdown track where his efficiency is tanking, the production starts to slow down. So if I can pivot off of J.K. Dobbins for a running back 2 that I'm higher on, some names I throw out there, James Conner, DeAndre Swift, B-Rob. If you can get any of those 3 straight up for J.K. Dobbins, that is something I would be looking to do. And then I also like Kamani Vidal as a waiver wire pickup, potential handcuff for J.K. Dobbins. Another sell high I have is going to be T.J. Hawkinson. And I don't really know if this qualifies because I don't know if you're selling super high on him. He hasn't played a game yet, likely going to make his debut here this week. But I would be looking to move off of TJ Hawkinson before he actually steps on the field. I really didn't like TJ Hawkinson as a draft pick for fantasy this year. He was set to miss a significant amount of time. When he did return, he likely wasn't going to be 100% of what we had seen in previous seasons. Coming off a torn ACL, typically it can take people a full year, a full season to get back to what they were before they suffered that injury. And then he also had quarterback questions. We didn't know what the QB situation was. Earlier on, it was McCarthy versus Darnold. There was no guarantee that either of them would be decent on this offense. So I didn't really like him as a pick heading into the season. I ended up starting to come around on him once we saw how well the Vikings were playing. And then also the tight end position around him was looking terrible. So the tight end position was producing terribly. You look at this Vikings offense, they were looking solid. They're putting up points. The overall passing yardage was there. And so then I kind of talked myself into TJ Hockenson, where he doesn't even have to be 100% of the guy we had seen in previous seasons. He can be kind of a watered down version of himself and still be a very, very relevant tight end just based on what the landscape was looking like. But over the last few weeks, specifically, what we've seen as of late, I'm kind of out on him again. And I do think you can sell high because you now have the hype of him coming back. People are expecting big things from him. And I think a lot of people out there are expecting him to jump back into like his 2023 production. I know I didn't rank him in my weekly tight end rankings for this previous week because I just didn't know if he was going to play, right? Didn't think that was a guarantee. And so it's not like I wouldn't have had him in my top 18, but based on some of the comments I got, it gave me the impression that people were thinking like he is a set it and forget it tight end right out of the gate. And if that's the sentiment from your league mates, I'm totally fine pivoting off of him. I don't think he's going to come in and match the production he had last year. I mean, first off, I think we have to expect a natural dip just with him coming back from injury. Like, I don't think TJ Hockenson healthy throughout the entire season is going to be the same guy, TJ Hockenson, first game back or like first half of season back off a very serious knee injury. And then I think we actually need to look at the passing environment with this Vikings offense. And they have not been able to support two pass catchers so far. I felt like early on with how well Darnold was playing, I did think Jefferson and Jordan Addison could both produce. Then it gives you the upside of TJ Hockenson coming in, having a solid role. But Jordan Addison has put up under 10 PPR points in 4 of his 5 games this season. You look at TJ Hockenson, he was a player who relied heavily on passing volume last year. He was first at the tight end position in target share. He was second in targets. He was second in target rate. He averaged 8.5 targets per game. So he was getting peppered with opportunities week after week. And in 2023, this Vikings offense was 6th in pass attempts per game at 37.1. In 2024, they are tied for the league lowest 27.1 pass attempts per game. So they are now averaging 10 fewer pass attempts per game than they were last year. The Vikings also just lost Darisaw, which is a massive hit to this offense. I don't think we can, mention that enough. That is a significant loss for them. So you look at Hockenson coming off a serious injury. Don't think he's going to be 100% of the guy we saw last year. It is a very different offensive environment. I definitely don't think it's as pass catcher friendly as it was last year. And there seems to be this perception that he's going to step in and be like a mid to high end tight end one right away. I'm just not buying it. If someone is, I'm willing to pivot off of him. This definitely would have been a more optimal sell window if we didn't just have a ton of tight ends, go off in week 8. But I still think it's a fine opportunity because I do think if he goes out, first game where he's healthy, active, and he lays a clunker, like that trade value is really, really going to fall. So some names I would look to flip for him. If you can get David Njoku, that might be a long shot, but David Njoku with Jameis Winston, I would smash, take that deal. I think Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, Jake Ferguson, like that might be controversial. I'm taking all 3 of those dudes over TJ Hockenson at this point. So he's going to be my second sell high. And then my third and final one, just a quick, talking point here. It's going to be Calvin Ridley. He's coming off a monster game, 15 targets, 10 receptions, 143 receiving yards. I just think through 8 weeks here, Ridley has proven that he is not a reliable starting option for fantasy. In 7 games, he has 2 games with 20-plus points. He has under 10 PPR points in the other 5. Calvin Ridley is like the archetype of player where you keep him on your bench because you spent a decently high draft pick on him. He has the pass production, like you think maybe he can turn it around, maybe he can do something. You don't want to actually drop him, but then you don't actually ever trust him in your lineup because he's not consistent enough to play and doesn't give you those ceiling games, as consistently as you would like. And so you keep him because you feel like you have to. You don't play him because you don't trust him. And then he just ends up kind of clogging up your bench as like a roster clogger. It really is like the worst type of player to have on your team. So I would really be trying to just throw him in for 2-for-1s, upgrade one of your starters, whether you're upgrading a wide receiver or running back. He can be that throw-in piece, that second option. and then either find, some random young wide receiver off of waivers, could be like a Jalen Coker, who I talked about in my waiver wire video, or just scoop up a handcuff where they're an injury away from being a running back 1 or running back 2. So those are going to be my sell highs and my buy lows. Let me know your thoughts. Any questions, drop them down below. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.